Hi, good morning or afternoon or whatever time zone you might be in. I'm Nicole Havelka. I am your burnout coach with the Defy the Trend community. And we are here talking about diet culture, specifically resisting diet culture and learning to say no to it so that you can love your body more and maybe even be a little healthier. We might dispel some of those myths as well. And with me is my friend and founder of the Tapas movement, Malik Turley. And I am delighted that you're here, coming here from, I'm in Columbus, Ohio. You're in Valencia, Spain, which is super cool. I love the interwebs. It's so magical. And it is. So, Malik, tell us more about yourself and about the tapas movement and about why you care about dismantling diet culture.
Sure. I will probably go in a little different order. So, as Nicole said, I'm Malik and I am in Valencia, Spain. It is sunny and beautiful and afternoon for me, depending on where you are. I started doing the work around dismantling diet culture entirely by accident. I didn't realize that it was a thing. I didn't have that vocabulary. I was just minding my own business, living my life in my body, and started teaching dance and fitness and movement classes in general. Uh, Fitness is a weird one. I'm working on getting that out of my vocabulary because anyway, that's a whole nother, we can have a whole nother talk about that. So I'm a movement instructor, and in that context, I started meeting women and talking like you do, a little bit deeper than maybe you do with random people on the street, and uncovered something that I didn't realize. I have my entire life been very confident in myself. Right? Like, I'm smart, I can do good things, I can do hard things, whatever. That has been a part of me my whole existence. My perception of my physical form, not so positive in my youth, right? But to me, those were two very different things. And as I started talking to women, I learned that for a lot of them, it's all the same thing. So, how they feel about their body dictates how they feel about themselves. And I got fired up and I was like, we need to separate that and do some work around that. Okay, that's fine. Then I started looking at the world and seeing how much society is giving women that, and men, but women more so, that message that what they look like is the value they bring to the world, and anything else is secondary. And that got me even more fired up. And then I started exploring the links and the background between, like, where did this idea of what we're supposed to look like come from, and discovered horrible things in the past. It is based on racism, on sexism, on a lot of fallacies that present themselves as science, but they're not. And with that behind this societal idea, it's no mystery why we are so bunged up about what we look like and how impossible it is to get to that quote ideal and all of that stuff. So that is how I got into this work. Tapas Movement is a community focused on doing that dismantling, sharing some of that information so people can see where those ideas that they hold are coming from and how to change them, and what else they can do and how else they can be inside their bodies and happy, rather than up against all the yuck that society says.
And full disclosure, I'm part of the tapas movement, and it was a godsend when I found Malik and these fantastic movement classes that didn't feel at all shaming. Like, felt like, oh, whatever body you bring today is the body you bring today to class or conversation or whatever we're doing, and that like I do, values being in relationship as well, with other like-minded folks who want to do the same kind of work in the world, both internally, right? We do our internal stuff and so that we can shine that and reflect that back out into the world, which I so appreciate. So thank you for creating that space for me and for others. And that's so, so important.
Absolutely. It is one of those things that you see a lot, like start where you are, bring your body to whatever, but always with the idea that by coming to that place or that class, we're going to change it into something else. Like you can have whatever body you want today, but we all have to work towards this goal over here. And so I strive really hard to break that narrative and say, whatever body you brought to class today is the body you have, and we value it. End of story.
Period. Right.
And we're going to move it. We're going to do stuff with it. But whatever you brought, whomever you brought, however you brought yourself today is totally valid.
Yeah. So you've already been doing this a little bit, but tell us more about what diet culture is. Because I think it's so ingrained. I mean, it's like anything in culture. The nature of culture is that it's the water we swim in, the air we breathe, right? And we often don't even realize it's a thing. So what would you say is diet culture?
Yeah. So you can, look it up on the Googles and get dictionary style definitions, but that's not why we're here. To me, diet culture is the idea that there is a right shape and size for any given human, and the attachment of morality judgment, anyone who doesn't fit that fabricated idea. Mm-hmm. So there is no right size. So if you hear people talking about, oh, I'm overweight or underweight, well, over or under what weight? What's the right weight? So just out of the gates, you're already inside diet culture if you're using that terminology. Or when we think about going shopping for clothes and there's a limited size range available, why is that? Why is there this narrow window that I have to fit into in order to have the privilege of going to a store to give someone else money? That's diet culture. Like, you want my money. How about you make clothes I can wear, whatever size that is.
Right.
Super small, super big, doesn't matter. Talking about being bigger, like, oh, I'm a bigger person, or I need bigger sizes. Bigger than what?
Right.
So society has created this idea that there is an answer to that, to the what, and that we are all supposed to do everything in our power to get to that what. And that is what we see on TV. It's what we read in books. It's what we hear other people saying, like in real life. It's what parents say to their children. It's what kids say to each other on the playground. It is everywhere.
Right. So why should we resist it?
Because it's a lie. We should resist it. Short answer is that, because it's not true. It's just not. It doesn't take into account the fact that humans are this range of being from all over the world in different climates, different elevations, right? There's so many factors that go into what makes each container the container that are discounted with this idea of diet culture. Because if there's only one way to be, then there's only one height to be. But we know that there are really tall people and really short people, and they're all valid, right? Like, it's the same idea. So we should buck against it because it's a lie. Also because it's harmful. So especially in the US, which is where I spent most of my life, only recently have I been outside of it, the diet culture grip is so strong that we have kids dieting. And we're starting that cycle when they're really small, relatively speaking, young, I should say, not small, really young, relatively speaking. And science has shown that as we do things like calorie restriction and forcing a change in our body composition, those changes are not permanent, they're not super long lasting, and they do harm to the body when you bounce back and forth and back and forth, right? It is more physically harmful to have those huge fluctuations in your weight than to maintain a weight, whatever that weight is, right? So you might have a weight that is a large number. If it's steady, that is safer to your body. And I'm talking about like your organ systems. That is safer to your body than if you're doing this with your weight.
Right.
But we start that when they're kids.
Yeah.
And so we're setting them up for this lifetime of doing damage to themselves physically and psychologically. Yeah. And if we could dismantle diet culture, that wouldn't happen. Yeah. If kids just knew that they were fine, whatever they looked like. Mm-hmm. So we would be saving money on our healthcare. We would be saving time and energy on our healthcare, right? We would not be putting ourselves at risk. I honestly think if we didn't have diet culture, probably science would be farther, because there'd be women who were doing science rather than focusing on how many calories they ate that day. And maybe they would solve, they would find the cure to cancer or whatever. But we're so absorbed with the but I'm not a size whatever. We don't have time and space to think about things, right?
Yeah.
I feel like we've talked about this offline before, but how much time would you get back in your life, or how much money would you get back in your life if diet culture had never touched you?
Gajillions of dollars and thousands of hours, I'm sure, right? And certainly a ton of psychological distress that still happens. I know we've talked about this offline before too, that I was in some of the best shape of my life and the thinnest I've been, which was still technically overweight, by the way. And I was working out like an hour and a half a day.
Over what weight though?
Right. I mean, by those silly BMI standards that they set with the doctor. Even then, even at my thinnest, and gained weight for a variety of reasons in COVID. And I'm still as recently as yesterday, I'm battling I hate my body stuff that dredges up all the time. And in my head, I don't believe that crap, right? I've talked to you enough, and I've been a feminist long enough, and I've been to know that this, and I've been doing all this reading about how diet culture is not only harmful psychologically, but is just utter BS, right? That it's lies, all lies, like you said. And still it comes up because I've been hearing it since I was young.
Yes.
I was hearing it before I was verbal, honestly.
Oh, you definitely were. You definitely were. I mean, unless you lived on a happy island that I don't have the money to buy because diet culture, right? If I could buy an island where we could just go and be completely free of the diet culture press, we would make strides. And that's in part what I'm doing with Tapas Movement, right? It's sort of a digital island where you go and there's not all of that yuck and you can just be. But this is my job. I have been dedicated to this for a ridiculous amount of time, and I still have days where I'm like, I don't know, there's a lot happening here and I'm not sure I'm happy about it, and how until we get more people thinking about the world in this dismantled way than in the current society yuck way, we continually get messages. Like if you open Facebook, you see an ad. If you turn on, I don't watch TV, but if you turn on the TV, you either are getting ads or just the fact of who is in the roles in the shows that you're watching and what they look like.
Mhm.
You're getting this idea, this message of there's a right size and shape to be. Or if you do see someone in a media role that doesn't fit that ideal, that's probably part of their storyline or punchline or what have you, right? We don't get fully featured characters who also happen to be a size 18. Like we just don't have that. We don't have access to that. Or if they are, they're like old. Because, you know, when you get old, then you don't matter anyway, so it doesn't matter what you look like.
Right.
What have we done? What has society done? So, I mean, ageism is a whole thing in and of itself. But all of that to say that we have to have support around the work of turning our back on diet culture, because we turn our back and it comes around to the front.
Yeah.
If we're going to live in society right now.
Yeah, so that's leading me into my next question, but I do notice that there is at least a couple of people have been dropping in and listening / watching today. And so if they have questions, hello, out there, if you have questions, drop them in. I should be able to see them here. If not, I promise we'll go back on whatever platform you're on and answer your question. But if you have those, we will be on here for another, 5 to 7 minutes or something. But my question related to that is, what are some simple, like practical ways to resist diet culture? Because like you said, once you start seeing it, it's everywhere.
Mm-hmm.
And it at least it has been for me, really, like it's now a little harder to work, like function in the world now and have conversations, because I feel like every other conversation now is about how much weight people have gained and lost. And I don't even know how to respond. Like I'm struggling now, even like, okay, calibrating my language to how do I challenge that without being a jerk to people, right? Like,
yes.
They don't like, I didn't know this 2 years ago. I'm certainly not going to get mad at them for like not questioning it yet, right?
It is hard. I will say that it is challenging to interact with people who aren't already walking down this path as well. And I think that's true to a certain extent anytime you uncover anything new or different, right? So the first thing that I like to explore or encourage people to explore is the why behind whatever it is that's being said. So you're at lunch, you're with people, menus are a landmine for discussion, talking about like, oh, I shouldn't eat that, or I'll have to work that off later, or what, that dialogue. Well, yes, exactly. But that's one place where it comes up. And honestly, if you just turn it back with, oh, why? And then they'll say, oh, because, I'm too whatever, or I need to do this, or I need to, why? Like I'm genuinely curious. Why do you feel like you need to lose weight? Eventually it'll either get to my doctor said, and then we can have a conversation about how doctors feed into diet culture, unless they're health at every size docs, and that's a thing you can look for. But anyway, I'm digressing. It'll either be my doctor said, or the answer will be, well, like, of course, like, because everybody knows, right? Or look at me, right? Look at me. Of course. And that's a moment where you get to be the sunshine, you get to be the positive voice of reason, and you can say things like, I see an awesome person sitting across from me. I don't see anyone who needs to change anything. Or is there anything that you're not able to do? Like, are you saying that there's something you are physically incapable of doing right now because that is the problem? Because 9 times out of 10 there isn't anything. But if there is, then we can have a discussion about, well, what else could we do? Right? Like, oh, I want to be able to play with my grandkids. I totally want that for you too. What ways can we make that happen? And you have to decide how far down the rabbit hole you want to go with people. But the why question is really a gentle way to get people to start looking at the reasons behind the things that they just say without thinking about it. Right? We're taught that you open a menu, you have to say that you shouldn't eat something on it. Right. Why? It's all food. Somebody thought we should eat it. They put it on the menu.
Right.
Order it or not or whatever. So that's one thing.
Right?
That's one thing. And then reminding yourself as you go that there is no judgment. I teach yoga. I know, Nicole, you do as well. We don't need to have judgment around what we're eating, how we look, how anybody else looks, what anybody else is eating, right? These are moments where we can practice non-judgment, and even inserting that into the conversation. Like, oh, I'm looking at this menu without judgment. It's all food.
Right.
Or I'm looking at you without judgment. I value you. Those little blips, that is disrupting that narrative.
Right. Right, because I know you and I have worked together, and I've even done some training with you about how to incorporate these ideas into teaching movement. I teach yoga mainly, but there's all kinds of subtle ways and not so subtle ways. But you will never see one of us teaching a class like this thing for weight loss. You'll never see us teaching a class like that because it's bullshit. And that's not and for me, yoga, it's disrespectful to an ancient spiritual tradition to say it's for better abs or weight loss or whatever, some physical externality that doesn't matter. Like, this is a spiritual practice that's deep and beautiful and helps you grow in such amazing ways that why would we confine it to that or use it for that?
Right.
So if you see those sorts of things out there, folks, like XYZ for this, for your body, like, run. Like, I'm not even going to be subtle about that. Like, get away from that. You don't have to take classes from us, but please don't take classes for those kinds of things, which don't, like you said, don't work anyway.
Well, they don't work in any long-term way. And most of the time, the thing that needs changing, you might need to be stronger to do whatever it is that you want to do. Or you might need to have different conditioning, right? Like you might need more cardiovascular endurance or what have you. And those are all totally reasonable things to pursue, right? Like, I want to be stronger. I want to be able to run farther. I want to, fine. Those are concrete, and those are not value judgments on yourself.
Yeah.
And that, I think, is the big difference. And so knowing that if you see something promoting intentional weight loss, that is something that is happening inside diet culture. Knowing that if you see anything promoting the right size or shape, that is diet culture. And if you see anything where there's shame attached to, like, a before, right? If there's a before and after, and there's shame attached to the before, that's diet culture.
Yeah. Right. Oh, such good stuff. So, I'm going to add to this, like, things you can do that resist this that I started doing in the last couple of years. which is refuse to be weighed when you go into your next doctor's appointment. First of all, I have, and I'm pretty assertive, by the way. Like, I'm able to say no and be comfortable with that. It had never occurred to me to say no to that, even though it was so uncomfortable to me every single time I did it, regardless of what size I was at, like, which of course has been a variety of sizes over my life. And I started saying no the last two doctor's appointments. I started saying no, and it has created a better conversation with my doctor, because it forces her to ask, like, so how are you feeling? What kind of movement are you doing? Are there things going on in your body that we might be able to address if there's issues, or not? I'm not refusing to do blood work. Like, by all means, do those things that give you actual data that matters, right? I'm happy to do that. And if you come back with something that we need to address, then let's do that. Not otherwise the default conversation, and has often been the default conversation for me, and I'm sure almost everyone else, is that, oh, you need to lose XYZ, are you exercising, or what diet, or what diet can we put you on so that you lose weight, regardless of what the blood work tells them.
Right. Yes, the not weighing is a huge thing. As an aside, I am in Spain now, and there's a lot of chit chat in the groups of people who've moved here from the US of shock that when you go to the doctor here, they don't weigh you.
Interesting.
They don't weigh you unless you say, I need you to weigh me, or I have a problem, there's something wrong. Then they will, like, they have scales, they have them, but they don't, it's not automatic.
It's not a standard procedure.
No. And from the US, we're like, but I think we don't have a good doctor, because like that's the first thing you do when you go to the doctor. And it's just a whole different way of looking at the world. The other thing is that with the weighing, that is that linking health to size. And somehow I think I didn't say that yet. And that is a huge component of diet culture and one of the biggest fallacies. Mm-hmm. So you can have however much tissue as you brought to the doctor's visit and be completely healthy, have solid blood work, good, blood pressure, your lungs sound great, all that stuff. You can be totally fine at whatever amount of tissue, and you can be totally not fine at whatever amount of tissue. So it's not, oh, if you're this weight or below, you're healthy, and if you're this weight or above, you're not healthy, which is what the BMI tells us.
Yeah.
It is, you are a person and you have health components. Let's look at them. Let's talk about them. And so, yes, changing the conversation by removing that scale information is definitely a way to dismantle diet culture on a personal level that also has a trickle effect, because that conversation that you had with your doctor after having been with them and getting on the scale complacently and whatnot, and then you're like, actually, I'm not doing that. There was a moment there where that doctor had to figure out what to do next and how to doctor differently. And I'm not, it takes a little while for the docs to be like, let's not automatically weigh every person who walks in the door, but you doing that made it that much easier for that doctor's next patient who says, no, I don't want to be weighed. They'll be like, oh, right, that's a thing that you people do. Fine, let's talk about whatever, but it's going to be easier and easier and easier. And then eventually, they will stop with that practice.
Right. So I'm moving toward our little wrap up here, because again, I know we could talk for hours, which would be delightful, but usually people won't watch that long. So so what if people want to learn more? Are there books that you might recommend? Or maybe podcasts, maybe, or videos, other things. I mean, aside from the tapas movement, of course, we'll make
Right.
that plug, which this is broadcasting there on a couple of your platforms as well.
It is, yes. So come and visit us at Tapas Movement. I do share a lot of resources in the community in terms of books to read and other places where you can get continuing education, I guess you could call it. The one thing that I would say to start, sort of a primer, is about food, because that's where we get the most bunged up, I think, in a lot of ways with diet culture. And so tackling it from that perspective first is a good way to start moving forward. And that is the book that's simply called Intuitive Eating. And we've gone through it in Tapas Movement and before. But the reason I recommend that is because it makes you look at your relationship with food, but more than that. Like, in order to look at what you are thinking or reacting to when it comes to how you eat, what you eat, when you eat, you have to actually look at your whole being. So that's one recommendation that I have. And then I would say whatever media you consume, like Facebook, Instagram, whatever, wherever you go, thinking about it rather than humans, think about hashtags. So health at every size would be one thing to look at. Body positivity, which has its own host of issues that we could go into on another conversation, is still a hashtag that will lead you to the people who are talking about this stuff. Diet culture by itself, just that as a hashtag. Dismantling diet culture is not as common, but the more we all use it, the more common it will become. Also, body neutrality is one answer to body positivity. And it needs an answer because sometimes body positivity can get toxic. And so body neutrality is a little bit different. Anyway, those are some tools you can use to start searching out resources on all of your platforms. And it will help you find people like Nicole or like me, in that you might be looking for a movement class and you want these ideas at play. Or maybe you're looking for a spa to go to, or a new doctor, or what have you, but you want them to be thinking about these things like you are. Those are some tools that you can use.
Cool. I love it. I want to also recommend a book that I just finished reading last week, which is Butts, A Backstory, which is perhaps the best title of a book ever. And by Heather Radke. And it's focusing particularly on our backsides. And it has a beautiful ode in the beginning to what it is sort of muscularly, and the tissue and all the things that make up our butts. But then after that, it is an amazing exploration of why, particularly from the US point of view, like why that is, like why the different size matters. And I'm not sure that she uses the word diet culture ever in the book, but it is a really good historic dismantling of how it came to be. And it's entertaining, it's funny in places. And she features toward the end a number of people and communities who are doing things differently. So not only dismantling sort of and there's some ick in there. Like it's icky to feel through that, because it is rooted in white supremacy, in frankly in chattel slavery, especially. And when you start uncovering that, it feels really icky. But we do that ick, which is good work to be doing, even though it feels uncomfortable. And then we get to like some people who have said, oh, that is a thing, and now I'm going to do this in a different way.
Yeah.
And so they do. So it has some really fun stories in there of people doing things differently, or just interesting things about people's bodies in general. So it's really cool. It's a good book. And again, I just finished it last week. So I've been recommending it a lot. It was recommended to me by one of the people in my community. So you can find, well, how do we find more of you, Malik? You've already alluded to this, but please say that. And then
Absolutely. So you can find your way into the community by going to tapasmovement.com. And you can find us on Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, all with Tapas Movement as the handle. So consistency is key everywhere we go. That's how you find it.
Right. And so likewise, you can find more about me at defythetrend.com. That's my website. And although some of my handles aren't consistent, so I violate that because they predated my business, honestly. But if you look for Defy the Trend or you look for my name, Nicole Havelka, you will find me. I want to make a special invitation in August, which is my birthday month. My birthday is Friday, actually. And thank you. And I am doing every year in August, I do a special thing where I give gifts to you. So I'm doing a whole month of learning to say no, like celebrating the act of saying no. And this is one of those things, saying no to diet culture and explaining a little bit more about why that is. And so I have 31, you get 31 emails. If you signed up now, you would be starting a little late, which is fine. There's still really plenty of good stuff coming. You get access to my yoga classes, which are normally just membership classes, but you can sign up. If you sign up for that main event, you get access to that. And then anyone can access this. I'm doing a group napping experience, affirming our body's need for rest on Sunday, August 27th at 3:30 p.m. Eastern time. That's bedtime for you, Malik. So that'd be
dinner time. It's dinner time.
That's right. It's dinner time in Valencia at 3:30 Eastern time. So an affirming experience and like a guided napping experience, which I am super stoked about, and keep having ideas bubble up about how we're going to do that and make that really fun and special and affirming. So that you can find all that stuff on my website, and I keep putting it on the interwebs too. So, and it's scrolling along the bottom. So the website and all of that is there if you want to join us, if you haven't already. So I want to thank you, Malik. Thank you for taking your time this afternoon in beautiful Valencia, Spain, where you could be at the beach or something, rather than talking to me. So I appreciate you chatting with me, sharing your knowledge and wisdom about resisting diet culture. And I hope that's what folks do. Say no to diet culture this week. That is one of the things to do. I'll be back live on Thursday this week. I don't normally do more than one in a week, but that's how the scheduling worked for people. And this is a perfect companion, but this wasn't on purpose, I swear. My friend Leslie Owens, who is a personal chef and a meal planner and helps people do meal planning, helping you say no to hectic weeknight meals. And talking about, I'm inviting her to talk about how is like cooking for yourself, self-care. And I promise you, we are not going to be talking about diet culture in that. We're going to be talking about what feels good and tastes good and actually feels like caring for your body in that conversation, because Leslie cares about that conversation as well. So I'm excited. So join me at noon Eastern time on Thursday. And Malik, I hope we do this again, because talking with you is always super fun.
Thank you very much for having me.
All right. Thanks so much. Have a great day, everybody.
Bye.